The Edmonton Oilers are looking down the barrel of the hockey abyss. Let's get to work.
You are Locked On Oilers, your daily podcast on the Edmonton Oilers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's edition of Locked On Oilers, where we've got your team covered every day. I want to thank everybody who makes Locked On Oilers your first listen of the day. I'm Nick Zararis. I've been doing digital hockey content for almost 10 years now. Today's episode is brought to you by our friends at Ultimate Hockey GM. You ever dream of being an NHL GM and managing your own hockey team? Well, now you can with Ultimate Hockey GM. It's completely free, and Locked On listeners get a 100% free boost to their franchise using the promo code LOCKEDONNHL in the game store. Download the game, visit hockeygm.app, or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM, start your dynasty today. So, today's show, a little bit somber. We're going to touch the opening segment. I thought of this analogy last night, and it'll make sense once I explain it, but styles make fights. That'll be the opening salvo, the first segment. Second segment, we're going to talk about why the Oilers recipe has not worked so far in this series. And then the final segment, make history or be history. It's that simple. So, opening segment. If you're not familiar with boxing or MMA, there's a premise in selling the fight that to get people to buy it, because those events, boxing matches and MMA fights, those are typically on pay-per-view. You have to find a way to convince people to spend additional money on top of what they're already paying for their cable and the various streaming services. In the fight world, if you want to sell a fight, you need to have a good match of styles. You don't want two people who aren't going to complement each other. And look, the fighters don't care, much like how the Oilers and the Panthers don't care. The fighters in that situation don't care. But the problem here for the Oilers and what's worked for the Panthers, and why I've seen a lot of people calling this a very boring Stanley Cup final, and to some extent, I agree with them. This is a case of a stand-up fighter, and this example is directly linear. The Oilers are Conor McGregor. The Panthers are Khabib Nurmagomedov. Khabib is a world-class wrestler. McGregor is most known for being able to throw hands very well, be able to take a beating, stay on his feet regardless of that. And there are people who don't enjoy watching grapplers, wrestlers, jiu-jitsu. There are a lot of people who don't enjoy watching that. They would prefer if MMA stayed upright, that it was mostly strikes and light grappling, because a lot of the stuff they see on the ground, whether it's wrestling or jiu-jitsu, they don't find particularly entertaining. And I can understand why, as a viewer, if you spend your hard-earned money, you want to see two people throwing hands. You want to see bombs going back and forth. In this case, if you're watching the Stanley Cup final as a neutral, you just want to see chances. You want to see offense. You don't want to see defense. You don't want to see goaltending. For the casual fan, that's what you're looking for. And in this case, the Oilers are the stand-up fighter. And unfortunately for them, the Panthers are wrestlers, or they're jiu-jitsu guys. They have the Oilers on the ground, and they have an elbow under their chin, and they've got their legs wrapped around the Oilers' stomach, and they got the other arm locked to their wrist, pulling it back for leverage against them. The Oilers are getting choked out on the mat here. And it's through no fault of they're untalented, they're not good. This is a style problem. You saw the Panthers do this to the Rangers last round. They choked the life out of them slowly over the course of the series. You heard me talk about the premise of championship rounds. The Oilers might not even get to the championship rounds of this series where they could force a 6 or 7. And at this point, the style problem for the Oilers is apparent. They ask their best players to do a lot. And we're going to talk about that in the second segment, so I don't want to get ahead of myself. But the Oilers are predicated on one path to victory. If you're a stand-up MMA guy, if you're a Conor McGregor, if you're a Justin Gaethje who's throwing just bomb elbows, if that fight gets to the ground, you're not nearly as well prepared for wrestling or jiu-jitsu as you are for throwing hands. Because of that, once you get on the ground, you get things like what happened last night where the game just got away from the Oilers like that. And look, they got back in the game. They made the final score respectable, but that's because Florida more or less shelled. They didn't feel like the Oilers were going to score 4 goals to come back and make that to make them really work for it. And it's frustrating. I understand the collective of Oiler fans, people who are invested in the Oilers, feeling that their team's not showing up. And to some degree, that's a fair critique. We're going to talk about that in the second segment, but you got to give the devil their due. And Florida is just miserable to play against. No matter who they're playing, you go back and watch their series against the Bruins, against the Rangers, against the Lightning, this series, the Stanley Cup final, it is miserable. They dump the puck in, they cycle you into oblivion, they get rush opportunities because they have high-end talent, they have a volume of scoring chances because of their style, and it really works. It really works hard. It is really, excuse me, I got to pronounce what I was trying to say there correctly. It is really hard to play against the way the Oilers want to play. The Oilers want to be quick breakouts, regroups, get the puck to our stars, have them use their speed to create space, to create zone entries, and dictate off of that. If you spend your entire shift in your own zone, if you spend a minute 15, whether it's Draisaitl, who had a rough game 3, he's matched up pretty much a lot, not entirely, but a lot against Barkov. It's really hard for those guys to get anything going. And we talked about that with Armando on the crossover episode. I talked about that. I've talked about that a lot in these playoffs, that the way you slow down McDavid and Draisaitl isn't like, there's no like secret sauce defensively. It's don't let them get to offense. It's make them play defense. Connor McDavid can't score if he's on defense. Leon Draisaitl can't score if he's on defense. That's the Panthers' secret sauce here. They are making everybody play defense. They aren't giving rush opportunities, and they are forcing the Oilers to work extremely hard for anything offensively. If it takes 4, 5, 6, 7 passes in the offensive zone to get one good scoring chance, it's going to be hard to do that consistently. To string together 7 passes in the offensive zone without losing control of the puck, without turning it over, without Florida intercepting it, that's really difficult. You're not going to be able to do that consistently, and that's why this is such a style problem for Edmonton. My premise for picking Edmonton going into this series and why I thought they were going to win the series was that their stars had continued to elevate their game with each passing round as it went on. And it's not that they're playing terribly. You know, McDavid and Draisaitl, they're generating looks. They're getting offense on the net. They just aren't playing at a superhuman level. I know neither guy has a goal. I know Draisaitl doesn't have any points. I know McDavid has a couple of assists. But the Oilers' recipe was always going to be our stars who got us here are going to continue to play at a really high level. And they're still getting their underlying results. But against an elite defensive team, against an elite goaltender in Bobrovsky, they are having a significantly harder time creating offense. And with that, you sap Edmonton of its strength. Edmonton is not a defense and goaltending team. They are not going to fare well in low event hockey on a consistent basis. Sure, every now and then they can break out the 2-1, 1-0 win. But Edmonton's ideal game state is chances and minimizing the amount of defense they have to play because their defensemen and their goaltender just aren't up to snuff when you compare it to Florida. But that will just about do it for this first segment. Be sure to stick around. Coming up next on Locked On Oilers, we're going to talk about why the Oilers stars can't get going. Hey, Locked On Oilers fans. I want to take a moment to tell you about one of our friends, the mobile game Ultimate Hockey GM. Ever dreamed of becoming an NHL GM and managing your hockey franchise? Do you think you could run the Oilers better than Ken Holland, who may or may not have this job whenever this series ends? Well, your dream can come true, and this game most definitely for you. Manage every strategic aspect of your team, play through the seasons, and lead it to glory. Hire the right coaches and staff, trade players or draft picks, and navigate free agency and the draft, all in a challenging and realistic game world. As an Oiler fan, you know there's no offseason. GMs are constantly making moves at every point of the year to improve their team's chances. And that's why I think you're going to love this game. I installed it on my iPad yesterday. I set up all 32 teams in the NHL, started to put the rosters in manually. We're having fun. I'm very much looking forward to simulating how the Oilers summer is going to go. Ultimate Hockey GM is completely free and playable offline. Play on the go as you want and when you want to. Locked On Network listeners get 100% free boost to their franchise when using the promo Locked On NHL in the game store. Make sure to check it out. To download the game, hockeygm.app on your web browser or look it up on the app stores. Ultimate Hockey GM. Start your dynasty today. Thank you to everybody who's making Locked On Oilers a part of your Friday. I know, after a game like that, you probably don't want to listen to content. You probably don't want to sit here and listen to me talk about missed opportunities and that they're close, because being close is great. As the old adage goes, close only counts in horseshoes and hand grenades. This is the National Hockey League. The Oilers haven't done themselves a lot of favors in this series. Their inability to convert is killing them. And look, Florida's a very good team, but Edmonton is not this bad. And I understand the frustration. You are entitled to be frustrated with the way this series has gone. The fact Game 4 is tomorrow and the Oilers, who are averaging 3.6 goals per game coming into the Cup final, have scored 4 goals through 3 games, you're entitled to be frustrated. And yeah, some of that is the fact they can't get their power play going. Florida's penalty kill is amazing. It's been the second best in the playoffs behind Edmonton coming into this series. I don't know off the top of my head if Florida passed them yet, but I got to check real quick. But as far as, no, Edmonton is still 93%, Florida's at 90%. But you get what I'm saying here. Edmonton's recipe is dominate on special teams, passable goaltending, and star players driving play at 5-on-5. The star players are driving play at 5-on-5. The special team, the kill is still fine. The penalty kill hasn't been an issue. But the goaltending, it's been below average. Stuart Skinner sitting at an .868 save percentage. There's not a team in the NHL that's going to be able to overcome an .868 save percentage this time of year. There just isn't. And I know there are a lot of people outside of the Oiler bubble. There are a lot of Canuck fans, a lot of Flames fans, just a lot of people who dislike the fact that Connor McDavid is really good at hockey, that dislike the fact that Leon Draisaitl is really good at hockey, that are having their moment in the sun to dump on players who are better than anyone on their team, whose teams may or may not have even made the playoffs. There have been a lot of Flames fans reveling in the schadenfreude of watching the Oilers Stars' inability to dominate against Florida. And you don't want this to become that type of thing. You don't want making the Cup final to turn into a pissing contest, because there are 32 teams in this league. At the end of the day, only 2 make the Stanley Cup final. Only 1 gets to take home the Stanley Cup. The Oilers Stars are not getting the bounces, and they're not playing enough offense. I struggle to think of a team that's going to be able to overcome its 2 best players not scoring. It's upsetting, it's frustrating, but we've got to take account here. We got to understand the shortcomings of the Edmonton Oilers roster construction, and they are predicated extremely on a handful of guys being the difference makers, being the drivers of play, and minimizing the responsibility. And Game 3, a lot like Game 1, it's hard to look at the underlying numbers and take them at face value because you understand the score impacts. You get it to 1-1 on the Fogle goal. Crowd is going bonkers. It was so loud on TV. The broadcast was not doing them any favors. The ESPN broadcast down here in the States is god-awful, but the crowd was buzzing. I mean, even during the anthem, the crowd was buzzing. Loud, energetic, begging for a reason to stay loud. Even when they score the second goal to get it to 4-2, that crowd got really loud. They get it to 4-3. that was like it sounded like they tied the game, how loud it was, at least on TV. I don't know about in the building, but on TV, it felt like they had a chance because the crowd was giving it to them. But you look at where the goals are coming from. Fogle, Broberg, Ryan McLeod. Love those guys. I think Broberg is going to be essential to this team going forward. I think Ryan McLeod has earned an opportunity to get some more looks with Draisaitl going forward. But Florida's quick strikes killed them. To get it to 1-1, have it tied for 7 minutes, and then Florida to rattle off 3 goals in rapid succession. You know, we're talking about 4 minutes apart and then 2 minutes apart. That just sucks the life out of you. And then Edmonton does turn it on. You know, to get it to 4-3, that's something. They put a lot of heat on Bob. They got some pucks in the net. But without their star players putting the puck in the net, it doesn't matter a whole lot. And this is the danger of the top-heavy roster. This is why everybody rags on the Leafs and makes fun of the Leafs for spending $45 million on Tavares, Nylander, Marner, Matthews. Those guys are all good. And no one's saying McDavid, Draisaitl, Bouchard are, you know, they're falling. They're like the Leafs. Edmonton has made the Cup final. The Leafs would kill to make a Cup final. But when you are up against a team that plays a more playoff conducive style, which is what Florida is, like we talked about in that first segment, Florida's got the Oilers in a rear naked choke right now, and they're starting to fade. The Oilers haven't tapped out yet, but the referee's checking. The referee is making sure they're still breathing because it has not been close on the scoreboard. And that's the thing. The underlying results are one thing, but you have to contextualize them. Yes, they have more expected goals through 3 games. They have more scoring chances through 3 games. Why is that, to quote the great Brian Windhorst? Because Florida's had a lead and they've turtled. And Edmonton is really good at trying to create offense when they're playing from behind because of their style. They're good at going from defense to offense quickly, but Florida is inviting them to take bad scoring chances. Florida is inviting them, hey, you want to take that shot? By all means, go ahead. Bob's going to have that clean. We're going to go back the other way. We're going to dump it in. We're going to make you go the full 200 feet again if you want to get one scoring chance. It's what's frustrating about teams like Florida. They're not beating you because they're like thoroughly outplaying you. They're beating you because their style is very replicable and their guys are all bought in. They cycle you into oblivion. They love to throw hits. They love to forecheck. They love to go high to low. They are in their style of play is tailor-made for this time of year. We're going to take one more quick break, come back, and set the table for game number 4 tomorrow night in Alberta. Be sure to stick around. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. With eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back, because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available for U.S. customers. Thank you to everybody who's still here. I know. There's no easy way to say this. It's real simple. Make history or be history. Make history, be the first team since World War II to come back from 3-0 down and win the Stanley Cup. Or be the answer to the trivia question, who did the Panthers win in the first time they ever won the Stanley Cup? It's that straightforward. I don't think you can realistically sit here as a fan and tell me you think the Oilers are going to win 4 straight. Can they win tomorrow? Yeah. I still think Edmonton has not played terribly in this series. Florida is taking advantage of the style advantage and taking advantage of their depth advantage. They are making Stuart Skinner, Cody Ceci, Darnell Nurse. They are making fringe guys the difference in this series. We talked about this a lot during the Dallas series in the conference final. Edmonton does not have a lot of room for error. They have to win one way. They are not going to be able to adapt their game particularly well to ebbs and flows of high scoring or low scoring. They need these games to be high scoring. They're going to have a hard time winning 3-2 or 2-1 or 1-0. That's just, it's not in their DNA. That requires perfect defense. And Edmonton's team, they don't have the personnel to play the way Florida does. They don't have the personnel to grind these games out. And I understand the vision. In Edmonton's mind, in Ken Holland's mind, in putting together this roster, he's trying to do what Tampa Bay did. He wants 2 top 6 lines that are capable of rush, high danger, quality chances, driven by skilled players. You know, Stamkos, Kucherov, Point, Killorn, Palat. And then you compare that to Edmonton. And in Edmonton's mind, Draisaitl, McDavid, Hyman, Nugent-Hopkins, Evander Kane, that's the recipe for them. They think they're that. And then you look at the third line Tampa Bay had. They had Barclay Goodrow, Yanni Gourde, and Blake Coleman. Edmonton looks at, we have Adam Henrique, we have Ryan McLeod. You know, they think they're close in we can do both because of our styles. The problem is you need Edmonton's top guys to just settle for zone time. And it's the antithesis of how they want to play, which is why it's frustrating because they're swimming against the current. They're trying to roll out of a rear naked choke and they're just getting choked harder. It's really difficult and it's really frustrating, but Edmonton's got to win one game, man. Don't get swept. It's at this point, you are playing for the pride of your team, your teammates, and you're playing for your fan base. If nothing else, don't let the Oiler fans be subjected to the schmucks out there in the national media. Oh, well, is Draisaitl going to want to sign because of how the Cup final went? Is McDavid going to leave because of the way the Cup final went? Those people suck. Those people don't even like hockey. The people who only talk about transactions and rumors, they don't care about hockey. They like gossip. They like knowing something other people don't. They are the most miserable people on the internet because they're not actually here to talk about what makes a team good. They only want to talk about the players. They only want to talk about trades and free agency because they have nothing to say about the actual hockey because they don't know a whole lot about the actual hockey. That's the secret of the transaction rumor mill that you see that drives all conversation within sport now. Those are people who don't know enough to talk about the game's mechanics. So they would rather talk about, oh, well, you know, who's going to be in the market for Leon Draisaitl if he doesn't extend? Well, if Connor McDavid goes to free agency, all bets are off for the state of the league 2 years from now. Who cares? There is still hockey being played. There is still a Stanley Cup to award. I'm not asking the Oilers to come back and force a Game 7 and win Game 7. Win Saturday night, hockey night in Canada. Don't let your fans get entirely made fun of for an entire summer. The Oilers are good enough to win one game. I'm not asking for the moon here. And maybe this is just the bargaining stages of grief, coming to terms with the fact that Florida is just better. I don't think Florida is 3-0 better than Edmonton. You can make a real serious argument Edmonton should have won Game 1, but they couldn't beat Bob, had a great performance. Okay, if it's 1-1 coming back to Edmonton, that changes. Game 3 last night, the dynamic's a little bit different, but you can't do that. The game's already played. What's happened has happened. We all got to take our lumps. We all got to accept that if Edmonton is going to do anything in this series, it's going to take a superhuman performance from their stars. And right now, the way Evan Bouchard is playing, he's been a liability in this series. He's on the smaller side. We know that. We know that Florida likes to target the smaller defensemen because Florida can gang up on them. Florida's big, Florida's fast. Florida's style puts pressure on them to make good decisions, and Edmonton has not made great decisions with the puck, especially in their own end. The one puck last night that Skinner misplays that directly leads to a goal. It is really frustrating to watch your team get picked apart, to get dissected because they are making mistakes. I'm not saying the Oilers have to be perfect, but they got to be pretty close if they're going to beat Florida because of how well they're humming right now. It's tough sledding out there. If you're going to win at this point, to win one game, you're going to need to play pretty close to perfect. Whether or not you can play perfect for 4 more games and force a game 7 and win a game 7, you can't worry about that. You gotta win tomorrow night, and that's it. That's the end of story. You worry about Tuesday when you get there. Right now, win one game. Don't go out sad. Don't let Matthew Tkachuk skate the Stanley Cup around your ring. Win a game, make them go back to Florida, put a little damn pressure on them, and at least don't go out sad, man. Don't make your fans think about how you got swept in the Stanley Cup final all summer. I don't even care at this point about the guys on the team. They won't get over it, but it's a lot easier for them than it is for the rest of us out here amongst the lay people who are going to spend an entire summer lamenting the fact the Oilers got this far and weren't able to get the job done. But that will just about do it for today's edition of Locked On Oilers. So if you could be so kind, make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcast at Apple Podcast or Spotify listeners. Please throw the show a 5-star review if you are watching over on YouTube. Hit the subscribe button, hit the alarm bell, leave me a comment. Can the Oilers even force a game 5, or are you checked out at this point? Let me know. Talk to you guys real soon. Till then, let's go Oilers.